Hello, welcome back to Leadership with Darrell W. Gunter on WSOU 89.5 and streaming on the net at WSOU.net. I'm so pleased to have a dear friend of mine from a few years ago who's relocated to New Mexico from her previous place, um, Miss Tina Trout. She's the founder of LaLa Gardens Cooperative, and she's the author of Natural Being Framework. That's a good mouthful.
It is.
Yeah. So,
All right.
before we jump into the interview, share with our audience about your background and how you came to be in New Mexico.
Well, it has been a very circuitous journey, and it feels rather heroic to be home and sort of like completing the end of my journey, appropriately in a place I was born and fell in love with from like I was born to be here. Yeah, Jemez Mountains is where I was raised, but I'm now on the backside of that, and it's a big volcanic. It's one of it's an active caldera, and so the ecology is very unique. And so, from a natural farming perspective, it's just like a playground. And then, yeah, and from that natural farming, all else has emerged, including the framework and the book and everything that I do. So it's fitting that I should be in a place that I love.
You know, so, you know, y- you have a lot of different hats that you wear. And
Yeah.
so you consider yourself to be a regenerative storyteller. You're founder of the Natural Being Framework. You're a permaculture educator and author. And you're just talking about how, you're going from soil to soul, which I love. So
Mm.
how did this all come about, if you will?
Well, I was trying to garden. I was trying to do something on the property that was and became LaLa Gardens Cooperative, a project that I'm really proud of, that was reflective of a lot of the principles I still work with. But in that gardening process, I learned about my limitations. So
Hmm.
I went off and got my training in permaculture, applied it, failed, discovered natural farming, which is an indigenous principle-based practice that all cultures shared pre-industrial. So I learned it specifically through something called Korean natural farming, but I also learned through my permaculture that these are principles that a lot of different indigenous wisdoms are based on. And so that together with, I'm just a life learner. I taught myself alchemy as well and practice it. And I just started to see that there was this overlap through all of these different disciplines of the same principles. And I also learned from my actual farming practice and my conversion to a co-op that not everybody wants to get their hands dirty. So I started to see that a lot of the problems that we were facing, not only in sort of normal corporate doings, but also in the regenerative circles, there were things that were coming up that were like kind of surprising and but I saw that they were based in the same principles. And so natural being was kind of this natural evolution from being a natural farmer to kind of focusing on us all being stewards of our gardens, and our gardens being our lives, our jobs, our careers, our passions, the things we really care deeply about, that it's all one story, and it's a stewardship story.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah.
So tell us about the community that you're in. How are you starting to impact the community that you're in?
Well, it's arising from clay. Abiquiu is both sand and clay, and a lot of life I've learned evolves from clay, sands, and silts. Clay just happens to be something I really love to work with. So, in a lot of ways, I think the way I'm integrating into the community, and I haven't been here very long, only about 3 months, but I'm already writing locally, and I'm um, participating in the local farmers market, and I'm actually selling some of the soil-based applications that I've made. So really, I haven't, anyway, that's how I'm integrating here is on a very basic soil-based level and with a deep understanding of how clay works.
Nice.
Clay can be a problem for people, but it really is truly the substrate from which we arise. Like the fact that there's a myth that says we come from
Right.
clay
Right.
is based in science, and it's based in my findings as a natural farmer. So I'm here to share that secret. Clay is a miracle.
Players. Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the natural being framework. How does it reframe and how do we meet our human needs?
Well, I started focusing on Manfred Max Neef way back early in my permaculture training, and I kind of saw it like, oh, okay, this is a more holistic this is a more holistic avenue to address human needs that includes things like idleness and creativity and freedom. And there's 9 in total, and actually 10 if you include transcendence, which I do. So I've just always sort of held it at the back of my mind. But then as I started becoming aware that this natural farming, which is principle based, could be applied in life, I started to see that Manfred Max Neef was onto something. And that in fact, a lot of the principles that were becoming obvious through natural farming were things that could be applied towards meeting these basic human needs. And he talks specifically about this process of meeting needs that starts first in being, then goes to having, and then into doing, and
Mm,
then into interacting.
okay.
And we as regenerators are often, or anyone, we're taught to focus on the doing and the interacting,
Mm,
right? What is it that you do? How is it that you impact? How are you a communicator? These things. But a lot of the focus lately is starting to be on our beingness and how we are functioning as healthy human beings. And then this having aspect, which for me sort of evolved into gratitude and how we hold gratitude for the places and the people and the things that we're in
mm.
association with. And so meeting human needs through this sort of natural arc became a vehicle to express these principles that I was finding that held true within natural farming. So it was kind of a synthesis, synergy, and a happy marriage between all things that I do.
And how did you come about to discover Max Neef's philosophy? Was it in one of your courses, one of the lectures?
It was from some internet search, and I just became aware of it, and then I was, I think it was another permaculturist somewhere else that was kind of newly defining it. And just over time, I'm finding that more and more people are starting to resonate towards his thinking. So it's timely as well. I just found a problem with the typical meeting your needs based on a survivalist attitude. Like you've got to secure your food and your protection before you can do anything else. There's another part of his needs framework, his framework that talks specifically about how to satisfy those needs. And there's something he calls synergistic satisfiers, which means if you can meet more needs with one action, and 7 kind of holds up as a magic number.
Hmm.
Within permaculture, that same principle is called stacked functions. So
Okay.
the more you can stack a function to meet one need, the more in harmony you are, and the more it describes an actual regenerative system. So I started to look at regenerative satisfiers because as a natural farmer, I mean, you can do so much by these simple actions to kind of meet that synergistic effect. And I think when people can feel it, touch it, smell it, see it in action, and they see that regeneration happen through these synergistic satisfiers, it's kind of like the keystone. It's kind of like the thing that convinces everybody like, oh, this is real. This really works. Oh, regeneration is actually possible, not only in soils, but in our systems. So yeah, that's a lot to say.
No, but this resonates with me because I consult in IT with with AI and blockchain, And in talking to different folks about information is how do we consume information? We consume information by seeing, we consume it by listening, we consume it by talking, displaying it. Yeah, so that's yeah, I'm gonna have to check this Max Neef out, you know.
Oh yeah, he was yeah, he basically he went off to study economics and then went to go practice it and decided that that economics is in fact not a science, it is a marketing ploy. And he met someone who was satisfying all their needs and barefoot hanging out in the mud, you know, and he just so barefoot economics was birthed at that point for within his thinking and his practice. But he's very much about studying, he was very much about studying the things that were working,
Hmm.
communities that were not operating from a monetary standpoint but still meeting their needs.
Right,
So
right.
it's kind of like a practice born in observation, which natural farming is as well. All knowledge is gained through this act of observation. It's not something that's acquired from university.
Right,
It's something that you practice.
right.
So
So, what does living regeneratively look like on a practical level in how we eat, relate, and make decisions?
yeah, in practice. Well, eating is a very interesting activity. And I would so I went from a beautiful acre property, big house, refrigeration, all the things, still sort of, you know, thinking into reality, these beautiful systems regeneratively, NFT supporting, blockchain active, like all these bells and whistles that really fit the bill. But when it came to eating, I realized when I hit the road in a bus with very limited refrigeration, no running water, that there were some problems inherent in our consumptive easy access. And I had already begun through natural farming, and it's an act of fermentation, a lot of it is.
Mhm.
So I was approaching food from a fermentation perspective. And I started to see sort of the limits in refrigeration and in these sort of like short, like shelf life oriented foods that are divorced from natural systems.
Mhm.
And that waste was really a byproduct of us shortcutting or neglecting or adding these components to commodify or whatever, that really we just, you know, there's a simple shelf life to foods and that you can extend that through fermentation. So, you know, working with miso and working with kombuchas and working with, and then milking my own goats and make.
Wow. Well, we 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 lost you there. Repeat what you.
Okay. So yeah, fermented foods is kind of this interspace between food, medicine, and natural farming. And foods, you know, foods need to build on the principle of return without producing waste. And food should return more than it takes. And there are specific recipes to do that. And they are cross-platform, cross-industry. And a lot of what I work with is returning food to a natural cycle that doesn't create waste. That's revolutionary. And it's something that we don't talk about enough.
Right, right. And how is it milking the goats? How many goats do you have?
I went from four. I started on the road with four, got a couple of boys. Now I have 15. And I'm only milking three of them. And I'm only milking, and I don't separate them from the babies. Everything I do with the goats is different than a lot of people do. So I basically enter into the program as somebody who needs the milk along with kids that are needing milk. So I'm able to only get what I want and need. So if I want to make cheese one day, I'll take a little bit more than if I'm just drinking it for milk or making yogurt. And you know, I'm not producing enough to sell, but I'm certainly producing enough
Hmm.
to create a food source for myself from them grazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is great. So how
Yeah.
can leaders shift from an extraction-based thinking to a reciprocal systems thinking?
That's yeah, it's an interesting question, and there's definitely solutions. I think a lot of, so like going back to the food and how waste is kind of, nature knows no waste. And
Right.
so I think a fundamental question for any organization is, um, where are my feedback loops? Because when food is going from food to medicine and returning to nature, that defines a feedback loop. So identifying where those routes of return are within an organization is not just something that satisfies a regenerative quota. It literally creates an entirely new value avenue. So we, as stewards of our organizations, need to learn how to apply value to these feedback loops,
Mhm.
honor, so defining and honoring and valuing these loops, whether in soil, water, carbon, community. So we will shift from an extractive mindset to a truly regenerative one, where waste is simply the raw material of future abundance. And
Wow. I
really is
love that.
that.
And so please tell me you have a book that you're working on.
Well, I post cancer and post cancer treatment, I literally in 8 months wrote a sci-fi time travel, which incorporates all these principles. And now I'm about halfway through writing about the natural being framework and sort of coming at it from a new look at these. What is freedom? What is protection? What is identity? What is the meaning of these words? It's like we toss them around as if we really understand what makes them tick, or why they are part of our beings. And I think sort of looking a relook at what those words actually mean is a big part of this new
I have
book.
the perfect publisher for you.
I Amazing. I've been wanting to know that. So thank you.
I've had a few of his authors on my program. The name of his publishing house is a small publishing house, Live Places
That's
Publishing, and he publishes topics that normally don't get published.
beautiful.
Yeah, but it represents the world that we're in, for that. So, my next question is around microbes memory and the sacred cycle. If you could, you write about microbial intelligence. What can microbes teach us about leadership and healing? Microbes.
Microbes. Well, first of all, they have a sense of humor.
Oh wow, they have a sense of humor. Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, and they're excellent storytellers all in themselves. Their cycles are very fast. Like within 3 seconds, they're already doing the thing that they're there to do. But here's the fundamental thing: the shift that they offer us, the microbial gem, I guess you'd say. So because bacteria are a type of microbe, and I work a lot with bacteria, not just the fungi, the fun guys out there that you hear about, the bacteria. I work with the scary feminine aspect of microbes, which happens to be the bacterial realm. Well, there are these bacteria called facultative anaerobic, which is just a fancy way to say that they get along in oxygen rich or depleted environments,
Oh,
truly the bridges.
oh
And
wow.
what happens is they'll find an environment that they like, they will habitate it, and at a certain point in their thriving, they'll go into something called a it's quorum sensing. They will all at once, all together, decide to mutate,
Hmm.
and the next generation will create biofilm, which acts as a permeable membrane that allows certain nutrients in, allows waste to go out, protects the colony. And what this actually does proves Darwin's survival of the fittest to be a just massively, like, illusory principle that systems and communities actually thrive by sort of paying attention to this quorum sensing and understanding that communities and are really there to cooperate. They're not there to compete. They're not there as an alternative. That we really do, as a thriving humanity, come together in community to do the one thing that's needed: cooperate and heal and protect our environments that
Wow.
we really are here to steward.
Wow.
It's that simple.
So, how does soil act as a storyteller in your work?
Well, she houses these microbes, and her story is diversity, diversity, diversity. Soil is actually a way to hold water, and water, if you're paying attention to things like the fourth phase of water, which you would learn about looking at my work, or any Pollack is the one who is scientifically proving that this is a thing. Water acts as a battery.
Mm.
And so it's alive. It's creating signals, positive and negative signals. It's magnetic. It holds water, and thus it holds life and supports us. So as a storyteller, I think soil is just really, it's the first word. It's the first verbal, like it's the first expression of life, just by simply holding water so that we can come into resonance with her.
All right. I love that. Yeah, because water does so many different things for so many different living things.
Yeah. And
So,
arguably we are water, you know?
my sister Libby said to me recently, "Are you drinking your water?" I said, "Yes, but not as much as I should." She said, "Because the brain needs water. It needs that."
Does.
Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, good for your sister. I think you should listen to her
I
deeply.
do. I do. I do. I do. Oh, wow. So, what have your goats taught you that science has not been able to teach you?
Oh my goodness. The law. Okay. Goats are master negotiators.
The master negotiator. By the way, my daughter loves goats.
Yeah.
We
The,
when
the
we
two
would go to
love.
Disney, we would go to I guess Animal Kingdom where they had the goats. So
Oh, that's so beautiful. The way they'll push against you. They're always looking for their boundaries.
okay.
And they really highly they don't a lot of everything you hear about a goat is a lie. They don't eat just anything. They literally select the things that are at the height of their nutritional diversity. And
Okay.
they actually also choose a diversity of things. So they'll eat green, then they'll want a little bit of bark, then they'll want a little bit of dry material. They are the perfect composters. And it's all a negotiation. So they're out there looking for the best that they can get. And they're going to push their boundaries to get it. And so they teach you kind of what a feedback loop is, because you're part of that loop. They're pushing to get, let's say, into a place they're not supposed to get. And so your pushback is literally the thing that is the feedback loop. But you've got this little handful of sunflower seeds because you know that's your negotiating tool.
Right. Right.
So it ends up being this dance or negotiation of energies. And I think what we're tasked to do is just learn how to balance and how to treat our resources in balance and as a kind of a dance. And I think goats teach me. They
Wow.
teach me how to dance. Yeah.
Nice. So let's talk about the return, living the hero's journey. In
Yeah.
mythic terms, what does the return mean to you and why is it important now?
Oh my goodness. So I like, everybody is on a hero's journey, right? And it's not just a hero's journey to save your partner or to change the presidency or to solve the issues of the day. It's not. Your hero, you are the hero of your own experience. You're the hero of your own life.
Mm.
And I think into every life, a little bit of like of death must come, right? We're And I think the cancer really taught me this, is just that we're mortal.
Mhm.
There is a cycle. There's a being born, there's a life, there's a youthfulness, and then there's your older age, and there's kind of approaching that point when the cycle is gonna, as you know it, come to an end. And that sort of insight, that ending in sight, I think defines the return. And the quality of it for me has been kind of like an assessment, like looking back over the entire journey, figuring out what really means something to me, and focusing in on that and sharing, because that's part of it, receiving and then sharing the boon of society. Like, what is it that you've learned over your life that
Mhm.
is going to be of service to everybody else? And not out of this altruistic way, but just of sort of this, hey, I've been on this planet for a minute. I learned a thing or two, and I think maybe you'd be interested in what I have to, what I've learned.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's kind of like that. I think everybody is called in some sense to be a teacher of the things that they've been through.
Right.
And I think that the return journey is a lot to do with just that.
Well, I'm going to have you back on the program because we have a couple of minutes left, and you just have so much wisdom. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show because I can remember from our discussions from some time ago how you just had so much knowledge and so much to give. You speak of coherence. How do
Yeah.
you help people uh, metabolize grief, loss, and complexity into
Mm.
service and beauty?
Oh, I think it's just this kind of it's humility, right? And it's gratitude. And
Mhm.
it's like living your own journey, right? Getting out of living someone else's life and living your own, and
Right.
living your own framework. A
Mhm.
teacher can't teach what they have not experienced for themselves. And
Mhm.
you really can only learn those things through gratitude and through humility. And so, and a lot of that is sort of is dealing with your own grief and your own loss and your own arrival at this understanding that failure is a part of the system. And
Mm.
it's through these sort of steps, failing, these failings, three failings in a row. It's a principle in natural farming. It's the principle of three. You
Mm.
try something three times, you fail each time. But by the third time, you articulate a direction, and
Mm.
that's a path. And so suddenly now you find yourself heading in a direction, and you know it's the right one because your failures have led you there. And I think it's just that brings happiness. It's not kind of figuring it all out in the end. It's more figuring out the direction that you're going.
Well, I'm definitely, we're going to get you scheduled back right away because there's so much more that I want to ask you and learn from you. But for your final comments, what does leadership mean to you today?
Oh, I think leaders that are cut off from their roots, are unstable, and that place anchors us in responsibility and reciprocity.
Hmm.
So we really do have to look at the places where we are and
Hmm.
take a full assessment to be truly able to lead.
Okay,
Yeah,
very.
adaption, patience, feed.
This has been too short, but it's been phenomenal. I'm looking forward to having you back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Miss Tina Trout. She's the founder of LaLa Gardens Cooperative, and she's the author of the Natural Being Framework. Thank you for coming on, Tina.
Sure. Hey, do you want to know where you can find me?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
Okay. I'm at naturalbeingsubstack.com. I'm doing all my work on Substack these days, and you can find me at Natural Being. So
When I
thank you.
do the promo, I will put your link
Thank
in the promo.
you.
All right.
Okay. Very cool.
That wraps it up this week with Leadership with Darrell W. Gunter. And we want you to have a great day and a great week. But remember, leadership begins with you.